After finishing work, I made a quick stop at the post office. As usual, my mailbox overflowed with junk mail and bills. I sifted through them, discarding most into the trash. Hidden between a visa application and a bill from Coco was an envelope with familiar, flowing handwriting. It had been over a year since I began receiving one of these letters each month. She must have known the mail was being forwarded from my old address, so she kept sending them there. I first met Trixie at a wedding reception. A coworker was getting married, and the entire office had been invited. After the ceremony, we all headed to the reception. About an hour into it, I noticed this tall blonde enter the room. She drew everyone's attention, including mine, though she wasn't alone. I tried to push her out of my mind, but it wasn't easy. The hall was small, and she stayed in my sight most of the time. After another hour, I noticed her growing visibly upset with her date. Just after the bride and groom cut the cake, I excused myself to the restroom. Passing by her table, I heard her mutter, "Bastard." It was quiet, but it felt directed at me, so I turned around. "Excuse me?" I asked. She flushed and said, "Oh, not you. I meant this worthless guy I'm with. He's been drinking all night. I've been trying to get him to dance, but all he's done is sit here drinking. Now he's left me entirely. But honestly, I should have seen this coming. It was a blind date after all." Relieved to hear she wasn't calling me a bastard, I went on my way to the bathroom. When I returned to my table, I saw her again, tapping her foot to the music, clearly wanting to dance. On impulse, I walked over and asked her for a dance. She agreed. That's how our whirlwind romance began, and 3 months later, we were married. Trixie worked in IT, a real computer genius, and had a great job as a system administrator for a large corporation. She tried explaining her job to me once, but I'm hopeless when it comes to tech. I could barely follow. I know how to turn on my computer, get online, but that's about it. I'm a heavy equipment mechanic by trade, and pretty good at it. Together, we saved enough for the down payment on a house. Life was great. We had a wonderful marriage, or at least I thought we did. I loved her deeply, and she seemed to love me just as much. But by our 6th year together, something changed. It was subtle at first. I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it started, but it must have been happening for a while before I even noticed. Trixie always had one night a week she spent out with her girlfriends, usually coming home by 9 o'clock. Gradually, that time slipped to 9:30, then to 10 o'clock, and sometimes even 10:30. In hindsight, I should have seen it, but at the time, I didn't. She also began working late a few nights each week, mostly Tuesdays and Thursdays. She said it was because of a big new contract at work with tight deadlines. Her company wasn't equipped to handle such a large order, so until management figured out how to proceed, everyone was asked to work overtime. They want to be sure it's a long-term contract before they invest in new equipment or hire more staff, she explained. "And how long will that take?" I asked. "I'm not sure. Could be a couple of months." Months dragged on into 8 before I finally started voicing complaints. She always responded calmly, "It won't be much longer, baby. I know you don't like it, and neither do I. I hate carrying those crates around, but I promised to help." Then one Wednesday evening, she called to say she'd be working late again, explaining that her coworker Claire, who was supposed to take the shift, had been in an accident and was in the hospital, so Trixie would need to cover for her. Over breakfast the next morning, I asked, "How's Claire doing?" Trixie looked confused for a moment, then replied, "Claire? All right. Not great. She's still on a stretcher, broke both legs and her hip. She'll be out of work for a while. Poor thing's been through hell. First, her boyfriend dumped her on vacation. Then the airline lost her luggage on the way home, and now this. So, you're working overtime on Wednesdays too now?" I asked. "Yeah, and maybe a couple of Fridays as well." That's when things started to click for me. Before, her overtime had been nothing more than a mild irritation. I figured it was just the fault of inept management who couldn't get their act together. But when she hesitated about Claire, it was as if she had forgotten her lie and had to scramble to cover it up. And if she lied about that, what else might she be lying about? It made me reconsider those late girls' nights and wonder what a systems admin was doing moving crates on a loading dock. The only thing I could focus on was the extra 20 pounds I'd put on over the last 5 years. Was that it? Had I become less attractive to her? Maybe. But in the end, it didn't really matter. What I saw told me one thing. Our marriage was messed up. I loved her. Sure. But not enough to share her with someone else. And not enough to fight for her. So what if I did win her back from this guy? How long until the next one came along? And the one after him? No. As hard as it was to face, Trixie and I were done. But I decided on one thing. I'd get rid of those extra 20 pounds. When I started dating again, I'd be fit. And oddly enough, I decided not to divorce her. Marriage wasn't in the cards for me anymore. And as long as Trixie had her lover, we got along just fine. So I'd keep things as they were. No messy divorce. No expensive lawyer fees. All I had to do was act like I didn't know. That night, she came home in a great mood and wanted to make love. Felt strange to refuse, and I was curious. Would it feel like I was getting the leftovers? To my surprise, it didn't. It felt just the same as all the other times before. But in my head, I kept wondering. Had I been her second choice all along? Was she using me out of guilt or just getting a thrill out of passing on her lover's leftovers? On Monday, I went to the gym, got with a personal trainer, and started a program. I hit the gym on my way to work every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. After a month, I even added running on the weekends, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, only resting on Sundays. Meanwhile, things with Trixie stayed the same. She acted like I was her only one, and I played along, pretending not to know any better. She was still working late at least 2 nights a week, and I stopped complaining. After 2 months, I'd lost 18 pounds, gotten stronger, and felt great. 2 coworkers, Grace and Chloe, even commented on the change. Chloe, more direct, asked me what brought it on. Just trying to get in shape, I said. You know, to be more attractive to women. And what does Trixie think about that? She asked, half joking. We've got an understanding, I replied. Oh, an open marriage? Yeah, something like that. Well, stud, Chloe said with a grin. I'm ready if you are. Her comment caught me off guard. We had always flirted, but I hadn't expected it to go anywhere. But judging by her tone, she was serious. What the hell, I thought. Why not? Trixie wasn't faithful, so why should I hold back? Knowing Trixie would be working late Thursday, I asked, You free Thursday night? Chloe gave a playful smile. Maybe, maybe not. What do you think? I'll figure something out. Casual dress. Pick me up at 6:30. I told her. She laughed. All right, deal. Grace, who had been listening, jumped in. Hey, I've got seniority here. Chloe laughed. Too late. You overslept and lost your place. That Thursday, I showed up at Chloe's place right on time. She answered the door in a bathrobe. Am I early? I asked. Nope. I'm all set for our date, she said, opening the robe. She was naked except for stockings, high heels, and a garter belt. Well, I grinned. Looks like dessert comes first tonight. We never made it to dinner. Afterward, she kissed me at the door and asked when we could meet again. Tuesdays and Thursdays work for me, I told her. Perfect. I'm free those nights too. On my way home, I swung by work, took a shower in the locker room, then headed to Michael's bar for a quick beer. I didn't want to go home too sweaty. When I got back, Trixie was still awake. Where have you been? She asked. I stopped by the guy's place after work for a game of pool. I lied. Well, I hope you didn't drink too much because I want you tonight. It wasn't easy, but I pulled myself together and gave her what she wanted. I realized I needed to be careful. Trixie always came home in a good mood after her late nights, and I had to save enough energy for her. For the next 6 weeks, Chloe and I kept meeting up. Things were hot and heavy every time. But one night, she dropped a surprise. Okay, John, she said. It's Grace's turn now. I blinked, confused. What do you mean? This is our last time. I'm passing the torch to Grace. She's interested, and it's time I step aside. You're married, and I can't afford to get too deep. There's no future here for me. We'll stay friends, but I've got to move on. I nodded. All right. Do you think Grace really wants in? Chloe smiled. Oh, she's ready. She knows what's going on. You'll see. Sure enough, that Friday, Grace came up to me and said, So, I hear you've got Tuesdays and Thursdays free now. Mind if I take those? My first night with Grace played out almost exactly like my first with Chloe. We barely left her apartment. But there was something different about Grace, though I didn't mind. For 5 weeks, we had our thing until she, too, ended it. I'm in too deep, John, she said. It's not right with you being married. Both Chloe and Grace had been fun, no doubt. But I wasn't about to divorce Trixie for either of them. They had affairs with a married man just like Trixie. Why replace one cheater with another? Over the next 8 months, I dated and slept with 9 different women. None of them lasted longer than a month, most only 2 or 3 weeks. And that was fine with me. I didn't want anything serious. At home, things with Trixie hadn't changed. She still worked late twice a week, almost always on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so those were my free nights. I don't know how much longer this would have gone on if not for a strange coincidence. One Wednesday at the gym, after finishing my workout, I was in the shower when 3 guys came into the locker room. One of them was the man I saw with Trixie at the Christmas party. I dried off, listening to their conversation as they changed. They worked for the same company, maybe not in the same office, but definitely the same company. One guy asked, "How's it going with that blonde from the Christmas party? Still seeing her?" The man, Daniel, laughed. "I keep telling you, we're just friends. I'm not trying to sleep with her." "Yeah, right. Friends like that? I'd love to have a friend like her." "Forget it. She's totally into her husband. You'd think the guy was made of gold." "Come on, Daniel. I saw you 2 kissing at the party. That didn't look friendly." She was mad her husband didn't show up. She'd had a few drinks and grabbed me under the mistletoe. That's all it was. 1 kiss. Still don't believe it. Believe what you want. The truth is, she's working all this overtime to buy her husband a bass boat for his birthday. She asks me all about engines and fish finders. The guy doesn't know how lucky he is. As they left, I sat down, staring at the wall. Oh my God. What had I done? I had completely misunderstood everything. I had let my assumptions run wild, and I'd acted on them. I had cheated repeatedly, thinking she was doing the same. The only thing I had going for me was that I never blamed her for it. She didn't know what I'd done, and now I was determined to stop. I had to make things right, even if she never knew the truth. But it couldn't last. I wasn't the kind of person who could cheat and then pretend everything was fine. As long as I thought we were both betraying each other, I could handle it. But when I learned she had stayed faithful, the guilt hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't even meet her eyes anymore. Making love to her felt impossible. It seemed like my touch would taint her. I had destroyed my marriage and wrecked my life. And it was all so stupid. All I had to do was walk up to her, say, "Here's what I think is happening and here's why." And we could have talked it through. After that conversation I overheard at the gym, I knew there had to be a logical explanation for the suitcases in her trunk. But I never gave her the opportunity to explain. I was too far gone, too lost in my assumptions. I couldn't even bear to look her in the face. I didn't have the courage to sit down and admit what I had done and why I did it. I was a coward, and cowards do what I did. I ran. I went to my boss and told him I had caught my wife cheating and needed to get out. I liked my job, I liked the company, and I asked if he could find me a position somewhere else. If not, I'd have to start looking for work in another place. He made a few phone calls, and within a short time, I was headed for Colorado. I also asked him to cover for me. If Trixie came looking, I wanted him to tell her I had left without a word and that he didn't know where I had gone. The next day, while Trixie was at work, I packed up everything into my pickup truck. Just before I left, I scribbled a note that said simply, "I'm sorry," and left it on the kitchen table. It was a terrible way to leave, but I knew she'd get over it. She deserved better than me. At least now she could get a divorce, say I abandoned her, and move on. That was 14 months ago. Every single day since then, I've thought about Trixie, about what we once had, about how foolishly I had ruined it. Thankfully, I've had plenty of work to keep me occupied, spending 10 to 12 hours a day with my hands and mind busy. But the nights? They were pure torture. And waking up alone in the mornings was even worse. When I first arrived at my new job, I tried drowning my sorrows at a bar after work, but that didn't last long. Going into work with a hangover was a nightmare, and the drinking was undoing all the progress I had made at the gym. So, I found another gym, started working out again, and got back into shape. After 6 months, I began to notice that a few women at the gym seemed interested in me. But I didn't make a move. My head was still filled with thoughts of Trixie. I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to think about someone else. I opened the letter from Coco. Turned out I had overpaid, and they were refunding me, so I ripped it up and tossed it. I didn't bother with the visa application either. I'd pay it off when I got my next paycheck, and I stuffed it into my pocket. Then, I picked up the letter from Trixie. I stared at it, holding it for a long time. I imagined that maybe I could still smell her perfume on it. Then, without opening it, I threw it in the trash. Really? You're just gonna throw it away like that? A voice came from behind me. You don't even open them, do you? I turned around, and there she was. Trixie. Hi, John. It's been a while. I was frozen. I couldn't even run because she was standing between me and the door. What's the matter? She asked, a teasing tone in her voice. Cat got your tongue? Then again, you were always a man of few words. You only gave me 2 when you left. And I still don't even know what you were sorry for. I've spent the last year trying to figure that out. You didn't need to bother with 2 words. You could have just said goodbye. That would have done it. Come on, John, say something. How did you find me? I managed to say, I'm not going to tell you. In case you run again, I might need to use the same method to find you. I'm not letting you disappear on me again. The important thing is, I'm here now. And I'm not leaving until I get the truth. Not here, I said, feeling cornered. Let's go back to my place. Once we were there, she didn't waste any time. So, what made you think I was cheating on you? I took a deep breath. You were showing all the classic signs, working late, which you had never done before. You were more interested in sex than usual, which made me think you felt guilty, or that your lover had you worked up before you came home. Then there were those late nights out with your colleagues, and the suitcases in your trunk, filled with clothes I'd never seen you wear. And at the Christmas party, I saw you kissing another guy, and everyone was shouting for you to take it to a motel. They wouldn't say that unless they thought you were lovers. All of it pointed to one conclusion. You were cheating on me. She sighed, shaking her head. Oh, John, why didn't you just ask me? Those suitcases? They belonged to Claire. Remember how the airline lost her luggage? By the time they found it, she was already in the hospital, so I picked it up for her. The overtime? That was real. You could have checked my receipts. I knew you didn't like it, and I tried to make it up to you. And the Christmas party? That kiss didn't mean anything. I was drunk, angry because you didn't show up, and I grabbed Daniel. Yes, it was stupid. But if you'd stayed longer, you'd have seen us part ways soon after. We didn't even dance together. I can't believe you just left without talking to me. That's not the reason I left, I said quietly. I left because of what I did in response. Her expression hardened. And what did you do? I hesitated, then spilled everything. I told her about Chloe, Grace, and the others. I explained how I thought our marriage could continue because, in my mind, my cheating made us even. But when I found out she hadn't been cheating, my world collapsed. I couldn't stand the thought of facing her every day, knowing what I had done. She deserved better, so I left. She stared at me, her face unreadable. And how do you know I wasn't cheating? I told her about the conversation I had overheard at the gym. Her face paled. Oh my God, she whispered. She kept shaking her head, trying to make sense of it all. Let me get this straight. You thought I was cheating, so you cheated to balance things out? I nodded. And as long as you thought we were even, you could stay with me, right? Yes. But when you realized I wasn't cheating, that's when everything fell apart? I nodded again. She was silent for a moment, thinking it over. So, if you hadn't overheard that conversation, we'd still be together? You'd still be seeing those women, thinking everything was okay. Probably, I admitted. She looked at me intently. Did you ever love me? Yes, I did. And I still do. I only stayed, believing you were cheating, because I loved you too much to leave. You know I love you, right? I wouldn't be here if I didn't. I need you, John. I need you to come home. If you don't, I'll move here. But I can't live without you. I can't, Trixie, I said, shaking my head. I can't do this. Being with you would just remind me of all the cheating I've done. I can't look at you every day and live with that. But you could live with it when you thought I was the one cheating, right? I nodded. Then come home, John, because you were right. I did cheat, just not in the way you thought. Daniel and I were sleeping together during those late shifts. Started one night when our shift ended. We bumped into each other, and something just sparked. He grabbed me, turned me around, and bent me over a packing crate. I let him. After that, every night we worked late, he'd find me in some dark corner, and we'd have sex. I didn't stop him. I didn't encourage him either. I just let him use me. But I never loved him. I loved making love, but not to Daniel. I never even kissed him, except for that one time at the Christmas party. That was our first and only kiss. I had a husband I adored, a husband who made love to me in ways I cherished. And then I threw it all away. I stood there, letting her words sink in. My mind was racing in 100 different directions, but none of it made sense. Part of me wanted to shout, to tear her apart for what she had done. Yet another part felt nothing. I had already come to terms with the idea that our marriage was over. Her confession should have been the final blow, but instead, it left me feeling empty inside. Her voice broke through the silence, trembling. John, please, say something. What do you want me to say, Trixie? You've just admitted to letting another man, no, not just once, but repeatedly, have his way with you. You didn't care. You let him use you, and you didn't stop him. And here I was, the idiot thinking we were even, believing you loved me enough not to do this. Trixie stepped toward me, tears filling her eyes. I do love you, John. I always have. That's why this is so hard. I didn't want to hurt you, but I was lost. I felt so alone. I thought you didn't see me anymore, that you'd stopped caring. I made a mistake, but I never wanted to lose you. I shook my head slowly. No, Trixie, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice. You made that choice over and over again. Now you expect me to just act like none of it happened? I can't. I can't get the image out of my head. Him and you, sneaking around in the dark while I was home waiting for you. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. The anger rose in me again, but I was too tired to unleash it. Sorry doesn't fix this. You broke us, Trixie. Everything we had, you shattered it. Her voice quivered as she looked up, desperately searching for something to hold on to. But can't we try to rebuild? Can't we at least try? I don't want to lose you. I sighed deeply, rubbing the back of my neck, exhausted. I don't know, Trixie. I really don't know. This isn't something you just bounce back from. You can't just hit reset on this. For a moment, the room was silent. The weight of her betrayal and my confusion hung in the air between us. She took a step closer, reaching out to me, but I stepped back. I need time, I said softly. I need space to figure this out. I don't even know who I am anymore, let alone how to deal with all of this. Her eyes filled with a mix of desperation and sorrow. I'll wait, John. However long it takes. I'll wait. Because I love you, and I want us to get through this. I couldn't find the words to respond. Instead, I turned and walked out the door, leaving her alone to wrestle with her guilt. As I stepped into the cool night, the fresh air hit my skin, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a strange clarity. No matter what I decided next, I knew my life would never be the same. Thanks for watching this emotional story of love, lust, and lies. Hope it touched your heart. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a fresh story every day. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments, so feel free to share your experiences and tell your story.